What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Draft Geeks podcast. Today, we got another offensive position, really fun one. There's actually a lot of discrepancy in both mine and Max's list for, I don't want to say the first time, but usually it's pretty close, but there's a couple ones that we'll have some good arguments or good conversations about. So hopefully you guys are ready because the Draft Geeks podcast starts right now.
Welcome into another episode of the Draft Geeks podcast, everybody. I'm Max Shostak over at the Draft Geek, here alongside Jace Campbell over at Pat's Drive. Today, we're bringing to you one of the most fun positions in this draft class, which is not something we get to say every year. The tight end position is a very deep group this year, although it does lack some talent at the top. There's not a Brock Bowers type this year, although some might say that there is. Very fun position group for you. We have our top 10s. We'll talk about more than 10 because we've got some guys in our top 10s that aren't in the other guys' top 10. We'll go through some honorable mentions, but we'll really focus more of our attention towards the guys at the top of this list because some of the players in this class are going to be game changers at the NFL level, at least in my opinion. Jace, how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I actually am excited for this one. Like you said, usually there's maybe 6 guys that you can talk about, but this year or this particular class, we're going to do our top 10, and we'll get to talk about 10 guys that I think are going to be somewhat impactful. Some will be more, obviously, but I think that there's 10 guys that legitimately have a chance to get drafted, and you can't always say that about the tight end position and stuff. But there's unique players. There's different skill set type of players in here, and they all are good at certain things. So I'm excited to get in here. I think it's going to be a fun class to talk about.
I love it. Jace, before we start, give me an honorable mention or two, just real quick, if you have any.
Yeah. So the one guy that made my tight end 11, who is just off of my board, is Joe Royer, this tight end out of Cincinnati. 6'5", 250 pounds, recorded 29 receptions, 416 yards, 4 touchdowns. Did he make your top 10?
I didn't watch Joe Royer, so I'm glad you're talking about him.
All right, that's good. I didn't look at your top 10 when I inputted the graphics and stuff. I know you sent them to me, but I didn't look at them, so I didn't want to talk too in depth. I didn't want to look too in depth. But I think that he's a very smart player. Good IQ versus zone coverage. He's very quarterback friendly, pretty savvy route runner, smart. He knows how to manipulate his routes and create some separation. Really strong hands. He's one of the few guys. I think there's actually 2 other ones in this class that had 0 drops on the year. He can both pass block and run block. That's, I think, important for a tight end to stay on the field, not only just run blocking, but being able to do some stuff in the pass game, whether it's chipping defensive ends or just staying in at all. The reason I don't think that he is in my top 10, or the reason I left him out, is I just think he's a very limited athlete. When he's at the next level, he's going to struggle against man coverage very severely. I don't think that you can just rely on him to say, oh, he's going to be good enough against zone to not be, or to draft him and say, oh, we'll figure out his limitations against man coverage. And then I do think he needs to get stronger. I think he's not a try hard guy. That sounds like it's a bad thing, but like he has good technique. He's going to try in the run game. He's not afraid of it, but he needs to get stronger to actually be able to move 260, 270 pound defensive ends, 4 eye techniques, whatever it is. So thought he was a very good, productive college Big 12 tight end, but I think he lacks a little bit of that athleticism and that strength to be a true impactful guy at the next level.
I love it. I'm glad you brought up Royer because he was the top guy on my list of players that I wanted to get to, but did not. I've got a couple honorable mentions. I'll speed through them real quick. One is Oscar Delp, who was the tight end at Georgia, who just never really got his chance to shine. I think he's an athlete enough to be a productive receiver at the NFL level, just never really got the chance to do so in college. And then I think he's got good hand placement and aggressive nature as a blocker. I think I wanted better knockback from him and a stronger base from a player who didn't have as much receiving production. But Delp at 6'5", 245 is a guy to watch. I think he's definitely a diamond in the rough. He was at Georgia for a reason, and there's a chance he shines at the NFL level. I don't know if you watched Delp, but if not, I'll go really quickly through my next 2 honorable mentions that I just wanted to bring up.
I didn't watch Delp, so I'll have to get eyes on him. And then I have one more, but I want to see if you are going to talk about him. So go ahead and share your 2.
I'll blend these two together because they're very similar players. They're both complete badasses in the blocking game. Both inline tight ends didn't do too much as receivers, but I love them both on day 3 for a team that just needs a boost of aggressive nature to their run game. The first one is Cody Hardy from NC State. Got eyes on him while I was watching another tight end that we will talk about today. He's 6'4", 268 pounds, huge guy, super aggressive. He was almost like a 6th offensive lineman. Think Jackson Hawes for what he was for the Buffalo Bills this year. And then the other guy is Will Kakmarek, tight end out of Ohio State, teammate of another tight end that we will talk about. An absolute badass. There's a reason that Max Clare, the tight end from Ohio State, didn't do too much blocking this year because Will Kakmarek was holding down the fort for the Buckeyes. This guy is a beast as a blocker. Again, not too much going on from him as a receiver, but 6'6", 260 pounds. He's huge. Love him and Cody Hardy as blockers.
Yeah, I got to get eyes on both of them. Obviously, watch their teammates. But my second honorable mention and my final one is John Michael Gillenborg out of Wyoming.
Okay.
Did you watch him?
No.
Okay.
But I think he's going to light it up this week.
As I was going to say, I know the Stock Exchange talked about him and his athleticism. I think that if you are listening to this episode before the Combine, you'll hear about John Michael Gillenborg after the Combine or after they test. I think he's going to be one of the faster tight ends in the 40. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. I think he can play both out wide and inline tight end. But the athleticism is going to jump off the page. So I think it's good that we talk about him right now before we get into the Combine, because some people will probably know his name a little bit more than they do right about now. So super excited to watch John Michael Gillenborg at least test, and then we'll see, how he does. But he does have good enough film. Like, he's been a pretty productive player in college. He spent 3 years there. He had a better 23 and 24, and he's missed a couple games due to some injuries and stuff. But he averaged 15.5 yards per reception in 23 and 14 in 2024. This year he took a step back, but you see that athleticism jump out when he has the ball in his hands. He can make guys miss. He's a pretty fun watch.
I love it. Let's break into these top 10s, Jace.
Let's do it. So let's go ahead and talk about let's go, 10 through 7?
10 through 7. Why not? Because I think we can jump through 10 and 9 pretty quickly. And so we'll go 10 through 7. At number 10, I have Dallin Bentley, the tight end out of Utah. Number 9, I have Josh Cuevas, tight end out of Alabama. Number 8, I have Tanner Koziol from Houston. And number 7, I have Eli Raridan from Notre Dame.
At 10, I have Josh Cuevas from Alabama. 9, Tanner Koziol from Houston. 8, Sam Roush from Stanford. 7, Justin Joly from NC State. So obviously we'll start with the one that's not on my list. So let's start with Dallin Bentley.
Yeah, so Dallin Bentley is a pretty decently sized tight end at 6'4", 265, 24-year-old, I believe, out of Utah. 1 career drop. I think he's got a good release off the line of scrimmage, and he's able to get his hands in good positioning as a blocker. So I felt like he's a pretty complete player at the tight end position. Good stride length to gain ground downfield. I just don't think he's an explosive and super twitchy athlete. I think the Combine's going to be huge for him. I will throw him way up these rankings, probably not too far up, probably like 8 to 6 kind of range if he tests well. But I do think it's going to be it's going to be a big week for him. He's way more explosive with the ball in his hands than as a route runner. So that's something that signals to me he may test better than I think. But Dallin Bentley, somebody to watch out of Utah, who's getting a lot of love, higher than tight end 10 from some people. I believe Mel Kiper Jr. So just a name to watch. But Dallin Bentley certainly got some traits that signal that he could be a very helpful tight end too at the NFL level.
Yeah, and I've seen this guy live a couple times, probably at least once every year for the last 3 years. So been able to see him up close and how he moves and stuff. I thought you hit it on the head. Very good build, thicker tight end, good sure hands, but I just don't know what his role is going to be. I don't think that he gets off of press very well, so you can't put him out in the slot. He's not super athletic, so he's not just going to create a bunch of separation against like linebackers or safeties, whether he's in the inline tight end. So I don't know. I like him. I think that he's going to have a ability to, like you said, jump up draft boards if he tests well. That's just my biggest concern. And similar to what I talked about with like Joe Royer, productive, played a lot, has very strong hands, which is going to probably get him drafted somewhere. But what's his expected production in the NFL? Not sure if I see it quite as some of these other guys. Yeah, what's his role? What's he going to be able to produce? Is he just a tight end 3 for a lot of teams that's going to come in on goal line packages and be able to catch a touchdown here or there, compared to some of these guys who I could see having high end tight end 2, if not tight end 1 upside?
Let's go into somebody that I think does maybe have high end tight end 2 upside if it all clicks for him. That's Josh Cuevas from Alabama. My 9, your 10. Why don't you start us off with him?
Yeah, so Josh Cuevas started at Cal Poly, so I actually got to see him at least once live, and then I think he went to Washington, then he followed the coaching staff to Alabama. So
yes,
he's transferred a couple places, but I was able to see him live. 6'3", 253 pounds. He had 37 receptions, 411 yards, 4 touchdowns. This is another guy. I think he's a very good run blocker, shows very good technique. I think he's a good enough athlete. He has smooth route running ability. He can create separation at the top of his routes. He has very soft hands. I think he does struggle at times to get separation from a little bit more higher level athletes. He can create it, but when he's going man on man against maybe the more athletic guys, which he'll see in the NFL, he can struggle there and get strapped. I think he needs to get more strength. And then I think he lacks a lot of yards after the catch ability. So what's his limitations when he has the ball in his hands? Not sure, if it's there, but I do like this guy. I do like his build. I think he's a little bit thicker, stouter guy that can have a tight end 2 upside for some team just with his build, good run blocking ability, and his ability to separate at times.
Yeah, I think the note about the strength that you mentioned was something that kind of pushed Josh Cuevas down for me a little bit. He's got a little bit of a smaller frame compared to some of the other players in this draft class at the tight end position. And while he is a high effort blocker, I just thought there's reps that he loses probably because he's a little bit smaller in stature than some of the other players. I did really like his ability to find the seam and just kind of sit in space and make himself available for Ty Simpson. I think he helped his quarterback a lot out in that aspect. So that's something that I think he can do that'll carry over to the NFL level. But kind of like Bentley, I think he's got maybe just decent twitch and nothing really special about him as a receiver. But he is able to get open a decent amount, not every time. And, he wasn't asked to take on too serious of blocking assignments, but was able to hold his own against those second level players. Can't be your best blocking tight end and probably shouldn't be your best receiving tight end either. But I think if you put him behind a very complete player at the tight end position, he can be a very good tight end 2 for you. If you're a team that's looking to fill a hole that your tight end 1 leaves with your tight end 2, maybe Cuevas isn't the guy. So think like somebody behind Sam Laporta who blocks and receives very well. I think Cuevas behind him would do well. But if you're looking at, I don't know, a Rondé Gadsden to be tight end 1 for the Chargers and he's just a receiver, Cuevas probably isn't a good tight end 2 fit there. So that's Cuevas for me. Yes, I think we kind of see it pretty similarly.
The other thing about Cuevas, and there's actually a lot of guys that fall into this category, and maybe a little bit why they are good run blockers, but not quite good enough in the NFL, they have really short arms. So Cuevas is 31.25 inch arms. That's the same with a guy that we're going to talk about here in a minute. That's high on your board. And, I like him too, but they are very short, stubby guys. And I worry about their blocking ability versus defensive ends that are going to have 32, possibly 33-inch arms. And so that's a little bit of a concern when I'm talking about some of these guys as, hey, I think that they're good enough run blockers, but how are they going to do in the NFL when they're going against, like, just for example, Danny Dennis Sutton at the Senior Bowl, 33 and 6/8 arms. Romello Height,
awesome.
Yeah, he had 32-inch arms. Derek Moore, who's another guy from Michigan who's going to be talked about, he had 34-plus-inch arms. Zion Young had 33-plus-inch arms. So I know it's kind of more hitting to the ground with offensive linemen, and you want them to be around 33. You don't need a tight end to be quite that long, but it helps in the run game and stuff when you have those longer arms so that you have the ability to create extension and you don't let defensive ends get into your chest as big. So that's a little bit of a concern. I'll bring it up with multiple other guys because as I was going through the measurements and stuff and why I was always like, man, why do I love these guys as run blockers, but then question them? It's because they are a little bit stubbier compared to some of these other tight ends that we've seen come out in the past. So that's kind of a trend between, I think there's 2 or 3 guys. I know for sure one more that I'll bring up, possibly a second, which will make 3 in the class total.
Let's go to Koziel, tight end from Houston, transfer from Ball State, somebody that I first laid eyes on when he was at Ball State when I was watching Sean Dolak play at Buffalo, and somebody that I really liked at first glance. Transferred to Wisconsin for spring practice, then ended up playing at Houston this year. Tanner Koziel's a really good and productive receiver with a very large frame at 6'7", 240 pounds. I just don't think he brings much to the table as a blocker, which is why he's lower on my list. And I don't think that he's going to score very well in the agility testing, which I kind of think is a big part of his evaluation because he comes off a little bit stiff, even though he can bring you so much production as a receiver. But Tanner Koziel's a receiver before he's a blocker, and I think he'll rise for a lot of people if he can prove that he's a better athlete than he might show at times on tape.
I mean, if you're looking for a big body tight end, you probably got him in this guy. 6'4.5", 245 pounds, and he's been super productive. Like 74 catches this year, 727 yards, 6 touchdowns. He also led the tight end group with 20 contested catches because he has that big frame. I do think he's a smooth, adequate athlete for his size. Obviously, he has the big frame to be a contested catch mismatch. He has strong hands. He has a huge frame. Not only is he 6'6.5", he has 34 1/8 inch arm length. So his wingspan is massive. He can catch the ball away from his body, go up and get it. But like you said, I don't see him at all, at least right now, being playable at the inline tight end position. I don't think you can even put his hand in the ground. I would even worry if you put him in a wing. Like, it would be better, but I still would worry about that. His physicality is really not there in any aspect. Like, I almost just question, is this guy just a big, massive, huge wide receiver? Like, he's not physical in the run game. That's why I'm not putting him in at tight end. He doesn't really play through contact very well. He just has a huge body to box guys out and catch it away from them. But he doesn't handle that well. And then his explosion, like you said, is just not quite there. He's more of a long strider with his big frame, and he's able to get on guys and make it hard for them just because he can use his frame to his advantage, but he's not an explosive athlete. He's smooth. When he gets going, he's smooth, but it is kind of, if he can get up to speed and if guys don't beat him with physicality. But like you said, this guy I could see being high side up or high end tight end too. If you want a mismatch type guy, if you need a guy that you want to throw it up and go into the red zone with, Koziel's probably that guy in this class. But that's a very specific, very scheme guy that you need. You might get in the red zone 2 or 3 times a game. So what, are you going to play him 10 snaps a game and just throw it up to him? You could. He'll be really productive at it, but is that good enough to put him in the top 5 of tight ends? Probably not. That's why he's going to be a day 3 pick, in my opinion.
And you may have a receiver who's more trustworthy in that role anyways.
Yep.
So moving from Koziel, do you want to go to Justin Jolly from NC State? Because you have Raritan higher, and I have Roush higher, and then everybody else is going to show up somewhere in our top 3s. So why don't we do Jolie? Your tight end 7, my tight end 6. You kick us off with my favorite of the 2 draftable tight ends from NC State.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, again, it's similar to Koziel, just a little bit better. At least run blocking wise. I think he's
not height wise.
Not height wise. Yeah, sorry. I'm just saying, I think he's a true pass catching tight end at 6'3", 250 pounds. I think he's really good out of the slot, detached out wide. He's a great route runner, especially at the top of his routes. He's able to use head nods. He knows how to use leverage to get open. He's very smart with his route running. He's savvy. His hands are great. He can go up and get the ball. Like, I think his ball skills when the ball's in the air, he usually comes down with it no matter what. He's one of the younger tight ends in this class too. He's only 21 years old, which I think is very intriguing because he can kind of still get better, in my opinion. But I think he lacks the strength at 6'3", 251 pounds. He kind of lacks that, bigger frame, and that's why I would worry about him in the run game a little bit more than I would some people. I also don't think that he has true deep speed. I think he's more of a good like side to side change of direction athlete than he is just straight burner down the field as a seam player. But I do like this guy's route running ability. I do think that this guy has legit tight end 2 ability to come in and be a 12 personnel mismatch. You can keep someone in the box. You can put Jolly outside and guard him, or have him be on a safety, have him be on a tight end, or you can put him as a wing guy and make mismatches from there. So I do like his route running ability. I do like his athleticism. I do like how young he is and the ability to just continue to get better. Maybe he still has growing. Like I do think he could grow a little bit more at the young, add to his frame, but there's still some limitations there right now as a, run blocker and other things that I would worry about.
Did you think he was at least feisty as a blocker? Like I have noted that he gets knocked back at the initial point of contact, especially when he's asked to take on a defender who's lining up head up on him.
Yeah.
But I thought compared to maybe a guy like Koziel, like Jolie, you could like he wanted it. You could tell he's at least feisty. The effort is there on a maybe more consistent basis. And then the rest, I don't think we need to touch on. We know this guy can play as a receiver. I thought he had impressive acceleration off the line of scrimmage. So maybe it's a feel thing in terms of being a seam player. And he maybe just needs to understand when to sit, when to keep stretching that seam, because I think that's a big part of the tight end position. We'll get into a lot of guys who I think are high on my list because of their spatial awareness is evident on tape. And other guys just try to run routes like wide receiver, which isn't necessarily the best way to play the position because part of the job description is being the quarterback's best friend when he needs that option. So Jolly's somebody that I think can be relied on as a receiving tight end 2. And maybe, like we talked about, younger guy could add weight to his frame and become a better blocker, in which case that makes the ceiling pretty intriguing.
Yeah, no, I want to say, like, I know I have him at 7, but I do think the top 6 guys are really like good in my opinion. So to put him at 7 ahead of some of the other guys that we just talked about and the one that we will talk about, I'm still very high on him. Like I could see him being a early day 3 guy. Maybe someone wants to take him late day 2, and maybe someone wants to get him in there because of his pass catching ability. Like I would not be shocked about that. There's other guys that I would see ahead of him in my rankings, but there will be a team that will want, like you said, hey, we have a really good inline run blocking, bigger tight end. Let's get a more or a guy that's shiftier, good route running, can catch the ball and be a mismatch in different type of, locations on the field, whether it's in the slot, whether it's in the wing, whatever it is. He will have a lot of teams that will want him there. He's similar, not nearly as good as Colston Loveland, but like that's the type of like kind of role that I see him being in. It's just like he is a pass catching guy. He's a pass catcher out there that's a little bit of a bigger receiver, maybe an undersized tight end. He's a tweener. He's a tweener in my opinion. So I like what he can bring to an offense.
Sam Roush or Eli Raridan? I'll let you pick.
We'll go Roush. You're higher on him at 4, and then we'll hit Raridan. We're pretty much flipped. So Roush, I'll let you start off on him because you have him at tight end 4. And I will say I have a kind of a underlying attribute about him that I do think I would move him up for, but I also want to hear your opinion.
Okay. And this is Sam Roush, who's got the underlying attribute. I'm curious to see what that is. I'll let you say that before you go, but Roush, 6'5", 260, 22 years old. This guy, right off the bat, man, neck roll, 4-year starter, team captain. I was in from the jump. I'll ask you, is this not because of Roush? Was this one of the tougher watches because of the quarterback play?
Well, I mean, Stanford in general. It's pretty much watching an Ivy League school out there. They're all 40 ACT guys, even though it's not possible.
Oh my gosh. That was rough.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of why he had 7 drops in 2025 and a 9.8 career drop percentage. I just don't think that it's kind of like basketball. You can catch a pass that hits you in your frame, but it's not right here. And it's not an easy catch and shoot. There's passes that Roush is going to get credited for dropping, but they're not great throws. And listen, you still got to note it. The guy's had struggles with catching the football, and that's important at the tight end position because you're supposed to be reliable. But I do think it's important to note how bad the quarterback play was for the Stanford Cardinal and Sam Roush. Getting into some of the positives, I think he's smooth off the line, very good at evading reroutes. I don't think he's the twitchiest or quickest route runner. Curious to see how he tests. Not that it matters a bunch. I just don't want him to test poorly. We'll find out how that goes. I think he's super comfortable blocking on the move, comfortable going through the chip and release process and pass protection. And he's got NFL size with good drive as a run blocker. I liked his anchor. I think he's able to take on some maybe smaller to mid-sized defensive linemen and one-on-ones, blocks through the whistle, which I thought was awesome. And then the reason I jacked him all the way up to 4 in my rankings is because I think he consistently plays for the whistle, yes, as a blocker, but also as a pass catcher. He's a very nice participant in the scramble drill and has great spatial awareness to make himself available for the quote unquote quarterback that was throwing him the football year in and year out. And then he's physical after the catch. Takes a few guys to get him to the ground. Even though, like I kind of talked about, I think his speed is just so. But Sam Roush is somebody that I would categorize as a potential tight end 1 in this class. I don't think he's going to be a high end tight end 1 option out of the gates, but I do think this is somebody that could develop into a close to 10 touchdown tight end in a given year at his peak. So really excited about Sam Roush, excited to see what he does with NFL quarterback play. But somebody who I was thoroughly impressed by watching and exceeded some of my expectations. I do think he could start as a tight end 2, but somebody that, yes, can grow into a tight end 1, like my top 5 guys in this class.
So first off, the neck roll as a tight end is such a good move.
Awesome.
Like at tight end or linebacker, you're just like, oh, that dude's probably a dog. So I do like that about him. That has nothing to do with his play on the field, but
right.
I wrote down, and the underlying attribute about him, I think he's the best run blocker in this class. Like you said, finishing through the whistle, how his frame at 6'5", 260 pounds. The only concern, this is another guy that fits into the category.
Does he have shorties?
Hands. He's 6'5" and 5'8", but he has 31-inch arms. Shorties, like very, very short arms. And that's like at 6'5" and 5'8", almost 6'6". I think that's very, very concerning. Is that
why he drops so many footballs?
It could be. He also had under 10-inch hands, but that's not really a big deal. Under 9 would be kind of a problem, but yeah. I don't see that being a problem. But that's a concern for me. But I do think he's, like you said, he finishes through the whistle. He has the build to dig guys out, and he's physical. Like his physicality, both with the ball in his hands, whether he's finishing the run, and running over a guy or breaking a tackle, or he's just punishing a dude in the run game. I do think he's a good enough route runner. That's why he's in my top 8 right here. In and out of breaks, he's very good for a 260 pounder. He can win down the field vertically, but his 12.5% drop rate, his ability, I thought that his arms are that's a huge concern for me, really. I thought that he needs to be a little bit better sitting it down in zone. I know you said you talked about spatial awareness. Did you think he was one of the better ones in this class at doing that?
I thought he was pretty on par with kind of the median in this class. I think that, I thought sometimes he can drift back into linebackers that are behind him instead of kind of sitting up and occupying the space ahead of him. But I have it marked down as a strength, but not a, big time strength of his.
Yeah, I didn't like notice it and have it written down as like, oh, this is a plus, like I do some guys. And so I'm like, I just don't see that there. And so those are my concerns about him. The frame is everything you want at 6'5" and 5'8", the 260 pounds. The arms are a huge concern. That is very, I mean, I know I've said it a bunch of times. That's I don't know. That is a huge holdup for me for some reason. Maybe, like you said, that contributes to his drops. He has a hard time catching it outside of his frame. And that would be something interesting. We'll see how he is with the gauntlet drill and things like that. But those are a couple of the underlying factors. Listen, I really like Sam Roush. I think a team could take him and make him into a tight end 2 because of the way he plays the game, because of how he finishes in both the run and the pass. But there are a little bit of factors in there that make me not want to take him above the Justin Jollies, the Eli Raridans, the Jack Endries, Eli Stowers, the guys that we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
Start us off with Raridan, man. Tight end 4. And by the way, he's my tight end 7, but he's somebody that I kind of watched later on after I thought I had what was going to be my top 10. And I'll just tell you, before I, continued early in the watch, I thought he was going to be in my top 5 and kind of slid a little bit back to 7 for me as I finished the eval. But this is a guy that needs a lot more love, man.
Yeah, well, you're going to look at his stats. You're going to say 32 catches, 482 yards, and 0 touchdowns. Well, every time I look at that stat line, I just go back and remember they had 2 beasts of running backs, and every time they were smoking
and Malachi Fields.
Yeah, and every time they were smoking someone, they just ran the ball with those 2 guys and then threw it to Malachi Fields. So it's like, I don't know. That's a little bit of a tougher stat line for me. Now, this guy is tight end 4 if his medical's clear. He has a very concerning medical history where he had 2 torn ACLs, both in the right knee in the span of 10 months. So ACLs have to, not ACLs, medicals have to clear for this guy. But we will know that hopefully very soon at the combine. His frame is similar to Kozil's. I'm interested to see exactly what he comes into, but they have him listed at 6'7", 252 pounds. So just a little bit stouter than, or a little bit thicker than Kozil, but we'll see what the official measurement is. He had 8 deep catches and 282 deep yards, which were most amongst tight ends. So catches past 20 yards is what PFF has him at. His size, both, in my opinion, his frame and how big he is and stout he is, and his height is great for an NFL tight end. He's a vertical threat. I think he's great over the middle of the field. He's a savvy route runner. I believe he's a 3-down tight end if his medical's clear. I do think he's a good enough run blocker. The only thing is, because he's 6'7", sometimes guys can get under him and they can move him a little bit, but he's 6'7". So if you're going to draft this guy, maybe you just don't put him in situations like that. I do think that he has a little bit of change of direction skills. Like I think Kozil's a little bit smoother of an athlete, but I do think Raridan is very good down the seam. Like he can stretch the field. He's very athletic, but he can be a little clunky in and out of his breaks a little bit. But again, it's hard for me to say, hey, a 6'7" tight end not running routes as good as a 6'3" tight end. It's the same conversation we have as a receiver, right? If you're 6'4" Malachi Fields, you would expect him to not run as good as 5'10" Makai Lemon or whatever. Like it's just, what do you want these tight ends to be? So I'm high on the upside of Raridan. I'm high on the production that he was lacking because of Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love and Malachi Fields for that matter. And then I'm high on him if the medical's clear, obviously.
I'm also high on CJ Carr after watching that tape, but that's a story for another year. Raridan, I thought, was a badass blocker, effort-wise, and once he's able to even the leverage battle, I think he is such a good blocker. As you talked about it, the pad level, it comes up naturally. The guy's 6'7". It's what happens. But I think he's got nice long arms. I think you tell me with the measurables. But he's able to control reps in pass pro as well when they ask him to stay in and be an extra blocker. I think he's able to make grabs through contact, gets off the line pretty well, decently quick release for that size. And he's a long strider to eat up ground when he's moving up the seam. That also applies after the catch. He lined up in the slot, attached, in line, adjacent to a second tight end. And then they also motioned him in. I loved this. When they would motion him in and they would snap it and he'd peel right up the A gap and they'd run Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price right behind him. I'm like, there you go. At Notre Dame, if they're doing that with you, I mean, that's a whole lot of trust. If that's your role at Notre Dame for some of these run plays. So that just tells you a lot about Eli Raridan. The drops, I thought, were very concerning. There's some concentration drops on tape that really show up, and I thought he was a little bit of a body catcher, even with those long arms. So maybe that's something that can be taught out of him. But Raridan, somebody like you talked about, I think he needs more love, and somebody to be excited about. Should enter the league as a tight end too. I think he's somebody that could grow into more as well.
Yeah, I love the frame. I love his ability to, like I said, catch the ball, be a good run blocker if he figures out pad level, if he wins, leverage wise and stuff. So I'm higher on him than Kozil. I think he does more than Kozil does in the run game. I think he can do just as good, if not better, in the pass game. And so as long as medical's clear, I'm really excited to see what teams' view of this guy. And I do think, he's testing at the combine, right?
Eli Raridan?
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything about him not testing.
Yeah, I haven't either. I mean, I didn't know if he was tested. You never know nowadays, right? Some guys save everything for their pro day.
Well, we thought Jordan Tyson was healthy.
That's true. Yeah.
That's a totally different conversation, but him not being healthy enough to test at the combine.
Yeah. You never know. You never know. So, but yeah, that's where
I'm not moving anything with Tyson until the pro day. That's what I've told myself. If he's not ready by the pro day, then we have different conversations. But we're talking about tight ends today. If I'm not mistaken, everybody that we have not talked about is in one of our top threes.
Yes. And one big outlier that we will get to right now. Should we get to the outlier now?
Let's do it. Let's knock it out, Jace.
Okay. Well, Michael Trigg comes in at tight end 3 for me. Max is tight end 11. So I guess I'll start this one off. 6'4", 240 pounds. This guy had 50 catches, almost 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. 17 missed tackles forced was the third most in amongst the tight ends group. His 11.3 depth of target was fourth most. So they're getting him the ball down the field. He had 13.9 yards per reception. I think this guy's a mismatch no matter where he is. I think if he's in line, if he's as a as an H-back, if he's outside in the slot, he's a mismatch. He is so good at creating separation. I think he's good or great at getting in and out of breaks. His route running ability is something that you would expect of maybe a bigger receiver like a Jordan Tyson type guy. Not quite that type of level, but still like you don't expect him to be that good of a route runner, in my opinion. He makes catches away from his body. I think he has a huge frame. I'm super excited to see exactly what his measurables are. He was not at the Senior Bowl, but I would expect him to have a massive wingspan. Like, he looks massive out there when he's making plays. I do think he can be a better run blocker. That's going to be the thing there. He probably needs to put on 10 more pounds of weight, in my opinion. His technique needs to improve. That's where he can get there. And then his concentration drops are very concerning. 12.3% drop rate this year. That is where, if he can hone that in, he goes from being now all of a sudden, in my opinion, a 700-yard receiver to probably an 800, 900-yard guy, because he takes away, 7 or 8 drops that he had throughout his career. And I don't know. Maybe I have a little bit of biasy because he kind of surged up through the season this year. And if I remember right, I believe he started off really hot and then he cooled off towards the end. He had a couple really good games at the start of the year. So that's kind of what I'm holding on hope to of what he can be. But I believe this guy has legit tight end 1 ability. He can stretch the field. He can run down the seam. He could run almost any route, in my opinion. If you can get him in, or if you find a tight end 2, that's a better run blocker than him. Maybe he doesn't even have to do that, but his route running ability, his ability to stretch the field, and his ability with the ball in his hands, I think can make him a top 3 tight end in this class.
I think the upside is there is what I'll start with. And I think the real process starts this week for Michael Trigg. I think step 1 is separating himself as an athlete in this tight end class, separating himself and saying, hey, I am the athlete, or I am the second or third best athlete behind Eli Stowers and Kenyon Sadiq in this draft class. I think that's step 1, because if he doesn't show that, then I have legitimate concerns about a guy whose game is built off of his receiving ability, and a guy who has concentration drop issues with 7 in 2025, which is, I thought, far too many for a guy whose game is built, in my opinion, pretty strictly off of receiving ability. He's got good separation skills and agility to create space against linebackers, lots of wide receiver alignments out in the slot, which I kind of thought that, made his release process a little bit easier, but also not many guys are going to press that 6'4", 240-pound guy. There's just not a lot of players that have the skill to come down to the line and press him. So I don't think that's that big of a concern. I thought he can take, a little bit too many steps out of his release, but I think that's something that could get cleaned up before rookie minicamp even breaks. The reason he's tight end 11 for me is because I think he's so far away as a blocker. I really thought, when they bring him into motion to make a chip on a pass play, and he gets blown up as a chip. It's a run, and he tries to throw his shoulder into a smaller defensive lineman. He loses the rep. I think he's got a hard time getting from point A to point B when he's asked to start in line and navigate through the line to go make a second level block. I just don't think he's got natural feel there. And then I don't think his hands land consistently. Defenders are able to go through him. I thought he was a pretty messy blocker. I don't think it's something that he'll be or should be asked to do very early on at the NFL level. He's one of the lower graded blocking tight ends, if not the lowest graded blocking tight end I have in this class. So that is why I think his athletic ability and just that combine performance to separate himself as an athlete, because he does have that yak and that natural separation. And I can't go without saying the spectacular catchability. Even though he has the 7 drops, he can make catches that other guys can't. He can also drop balls that everybody else will catch. But if you tell me that, he tests out of this water and he's going to clean up the drops and the spectacular catch isn't going away, and maybe he gets more natural feel when he's attacking the seam, because right now he's kind of just a go guy out of that position, go dig and just a curl. Then I think, you could talk about this guy as a top 8 to 6 guy in this class. I'm typically not a fan of these types of tight ends with the Oronde Gadsden type. I think they're very team specific. I think he's got a long way to go before he becomes an Isaiah Likely because, Likely wasn't the best technical blocker, but he's just such an effort blocker to where it just works when they ask him to do it. But I think Likely's kind of the ceiling for a guy like Trigg, and the floor kind of just being a big wide receiver that doesn't work out. But I think he's a very polarizing player for the reasons that we kind of outlined, both on the high and low side. And in my opinion, I think all eyes are on him at the combine, because I think if he tests average, I'm pretty much out.
Yeah, Dallas says this is probably the largest gap you guys have had so far this year. I love to see the differing views. I agree. I don't think we've had a bigger gap in any player at any position in the 2 years we've been doing
Drew Aller summer scouting comes to mind.
Yeah.
I think it was QB. I was 8 or 6, and then you had him at 2. But also, like when we talked about that one, it was the same language. It was just, you were like, it's gonna happen, and I was like, I need to see it happen. This is the largest gap we've ever had of a player. Film evals are done.
Yeah, usually if someone doesn't make like my list or your list, it's because he's at like 11 or whatever, like he is here. And then for me, you'd be at like 9 or 10. Like they're usually off of my list, and then they're barely on yours, and vice versa. So to have a guy in the top 3. Yeah. So, and listen, I could see this guy being taken as late as like tight end 6. Like I could easily see Eli Stowers and stuff, but I think the last 2 years, Michael Trigg has been on an upwards trajectory. He's been very good. His stats have been improving. I think, like you said, his run blocking is a question, but I think he has the effort there. He's willing to do it. He throws it in there. He just doesn't have the technique.
He throws his body in there for sure.
Maybe you just find a tight end 2, or maybe you just find a different tight end and like go with his elite receiving ability, because that's what I believe he has. Like I believe he's an elite receiver. Sometimes they even put him as the number 1 receiver out there on the outside and just throw it up to him. Like he had a lot of clips like that, and most of his clips came from out of the slot. But I guess I'm buying into the high upside. And like you said, it'll be really interesting, because if he has the lack of ability to block and he has to be out on the slot and he runs like a 4.7, then I can see why a lot of people would be out on him. But he's been productive the last couple of years. He's created separation. So I'd be shocked if we're really disappointed in his like testing. I don't know if he's going to blow us away, but I don't think he's going to just throw. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a dud. It might, if anything, in my opinion, just be like, oh, that was it. Like, okay. And then I'd still probably be a little bit in on him just because I've seen him be super productive. And I think he has a lot of tools that are hard to teach. He creates separation. So yeah, it's kind of fun to sit here and talk about this. We haven't had a huge discrepancy like this, at least in 2 years on the show.
I need a yes or no from you on this one. Do you think that Oronde Gadsden's, and this is a pure plagiarism from the stock exchange, because they had the same question on their episode about who has to have the best combine performances at every position, and one of them brought up Trigg. Do you think the emergence of Oronde Gadsden for the Chargers last year helps Michael Trigg, because it's something to point to and say, this guy was a fake tight end at Syracuse and it worked in a handful of games for the Chargers?
I do. I think that you see more tight ends nowadays that fit into the Colston Loveland, role where you don't have
I wouldn't
to
compare those two's blocking abilities.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying how they're used schematically. You almost don't, if there is a good enough OC and they believe in not having a tight end in the box or doing unique stuff with them in the motion game and just making them be a bigger slot receiver, then there's a role for that. And obviously you have to carry a tight end 2 or a tight end 3 on roster with a guy like Trigg that can give you run blocking ability. But there has been enough success stories and enough super productive teams that have a guy in that role for their offense, and you can see their ability to do, make it a mismatch. And so I do think that that's what teams are trending to. Maybe it's more of like, hey, instead of having 2 guys that are similar, we can play both of them in 12 personnel. It's like, hey, we're going to have one guy that's going to be our inline guy and one guy that's going to be our slot guy. And that's how we're going to roll. And, you're going to know probably our tendencies when one's on the field and one's not. But it's also like, you still have to stop us. You have to find a guy that can guard Michael Trigg, that's big enough to guard him and fast enough to run with him. And it's very hard to find guys like that. Not Nicky Mawaris don't come out every year.
I was going to say, don't put him up against the Seahawks.
Yeah, Nicky Mawari doesn't come out in a year, and that's why they're Super Bowl champs. You just don't have a lot of players in the league that can do that. So yeah, I think that the resurgence of that type of role and position in an offense and what you've seen people be able to do, even if they are good run blockers, like you said, Colston Loveland's a good run blocker. Like, he's a good run blocker, but his best attributes is pass catching, route running, yards after the catch. And so what they do with him, I think, has made a lot of teams realize, like, hey, we can make a role for a guy like that.
I love it. Who's next?
Probably Eli Stowers.
All right, Eli Stowers, my tight end 3, and I would guess there's a chance that the way I see Eli Stowers is a little bit similar to the way that you see Michael Trigg. Eli Stowers, 6'4", 235-pound tight end who, no secret, I think needs to pack on a little more weight. 23 years old, former quarterback at New Mexico State University. Moved to tight end. I feel like we've done this spiel multiple times every time we talk about Stowers, but moved to tight end after Diego Pavia took his spot at NMSU, and then they transferred to Vanderbilt together. This guy has been incredibly productive for the Vanderbilt Commodores at the SEC level, carries a huge catch radius. I think he's very smooth player off the line of scrimmage as a receiver, smooth in and out of his breaks. He's able to dip his shoulders to dodge rerouters, and I think he's got very nice top end route speed for his position. I think Eli Stowers has the best spatial awareness of any tight end in this class, and I thought it was by a long shot as I kept watching him. He was Diego Pavia's best friend, and if Diego Pavia had won the Heisman Trophy, I think he should have been legally obligated to cut it in half and give one half to Eli Stowers and then the other half to his offensive line. But Eli Stowers can be a quarterback's best friend at the NFL level. He's a great seam stretcher vertically, and I think he runs all those underneath routes well. I wouldn't be surprised if after the combine, people are talking about him as the tight end 1 in this draft class. And then I also think he showcases toughness after the catch. He's able to run through contact. Listen, when you talk about this guy as a blocker, he's not going to be an expert blocker. He does not pass protect. He's either running routes or off the field. And then, or run blocking, obviously. And then when in line as a run blocker, I thought he was usually intentionally motioned or matched up against a smaller defender, creating an advantageous matchup to him. And you know what? Credit to Vanderbilt for limiting the amount of times that he was set up to get embarrassed, but you're not sneaking that one past Jace and I. We're going to pick up on that. So Eli Stowers, I think, is an excellent receiving tight end. I think he's got some work to do as a blocker. I think he can put on some weight, but I liked his effort. And I think that, he had good reps against those smaller players that he did block. So I don't think he's a 0 out there as a blocker, but the spatial awareness is why I'm very comfortable in saying this guy's going to find success early in his NFL career.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think he's probably one of the most athletic guys in this class, and we'll talk about Sadiq here in a minute.
He's going to have a bonkers RAS score, Eli Stowers.
Do you think him or Sadiq test? Like, who's going to be more of a whoa?
Stowers.
Really?
I think we know Sadiq is that. So maybe I misunderstood the question, but like, I think we know Sadiq's going to be an unbelievable athlete. Like if the RAS score doesn't start with a 9, I'm going to be shocked. Eli Stowers, I feel like has a little bit more leeway. I think he was a crazy track guy. But just like, I don't know, I've seen Sadiq jump over people. I know he's going to jump out of the gym and fly, and he wears his jersey rolled up and he's jacked. But I think Stowers has a chance to test better than him.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily like who's going to wow us, because I agree with you. Everyone knows Sadiq's going to do good. But at the end of the day, whose combine are you going to look at and say, oh man, like Sadiq ran better. Maybe Sadiq jumped better. I think it'll be really close. They both are on Fieldman's freak list. They're both in the top 15. I'll hit on that. Stowers was 15th on Fieldman's freak list. He broad jumped 11.3 this season. And that's up 5 years from, or sorry, not 5 years. That's up 5 inches from last year. So he improved on his broad jump by 5 inches. He almost had a 40-inch vert. So I would expect people to look for that number from Eli Stowers right there. He was at 39-inch vertical when they tested in the summer. So yeah, he's going to test like a freak. I believe this guy's a true H-back tight end with the lack of run blocking ability. I think that you're going to put him in the slot. You're going to put him in a wing position, and like Vanderbilt did, you're going to motion him a lot. You're going to get him in advantageous situations. You're going to use him on short flat passes or shallow routes just to get the ball in his hands and let him go to work with the yards after the catch. I agree with you. Best spatial awareness because of that tight end background, his ability to know when to sit, where to go, where to carry out his routes, so he can get in a window for the quarterback. Super. It's really impressive stuff. But again, that's why he was a quarterback, is like he understands the game like that. And
I should have said that, of course.
So yes. I like that. I like him. He is going to be athletic. I think that there's a little bit more tight end concerns on what his role is, but I could also agree with you. I could see him being the third tight end taken off the board. He falls at tight end 6 for me, just based off of, kind of what I was looking for. But I think he could be a tight end 3. I think he could be a late second, early third round guy. Someone will want to get him in their offense and use him in a unique way, kind of like the Jonnu Smith role that we've seen the last couple years. Evan Ingram is another guy, like all those kind of gadget H-back tight ends that are always on the move and can do a lot with the ball in their hands is where Eli Stowers fits into this conversation.
You think he throws a pass within his first 2 seasons as an NFL
Well, it depends on who he goes to, but if he goes to a creative guy, then very likely he does, yes.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah. He can throw the Philly special because Dallas Goedert. He threw it. So
or was it Trey Burton or was it Dallas Goedert?
I thought it was Goddard, but maybe you're right. It probably was
touched
Burton.
The ball on that play, right? It was snap to one, pitch to the something. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. One of them, but still.
I'm surprised you brought that up, man.
I dream about every night. That and the stupid helmet catch from freaking David Tyree or whatever his name was.
They call those nightmares, and you know exactly who David Tyree is.
No, I don't know him. I don't give him the respect of knowing his name. He ruined my childhood. That game was on my birthday. I cried for hours after.
So. Happy belated birthday, then.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So let's move on to Jack Endre. Is it Endries? Endries. There we go.
Like injuries, but Endries.
Endries. You have him all the way up at tight end 2. I have him
all the way.
So why don't you tell me why he is tight end 2 for you?
Here's your other guy with 0 drops, Jace.
There you go.
Jack Endries, 6'4", 240. I kind of thought his frame looked like he can add some weight. I don't know why there's guys where I'm like, you're 6'4", 240 and you're undersized and you look filled out. I think Jack Endries can bulk up a little bit. I'll just give you the rundown on Endries for me. I was impressed by his hands, his ability to make off-frame grabs. Touched on it with zero drops, but it's not just like, he just never dropped the ball. This guy's got hands that pop off the tape. Smooth release, and I think he brings impact to his blocks as a puller. He had especially impressive tape against some of the best players in this class on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, they're all on one team, and it's from one game, but it's very notable because of who those players are. I thought he brought his aggression and 1 reps as a puller against both Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese in that week 1 matchup against Ohio State, and he can be trusted in those kinds of blocks, and he blocks well on the outside. He stays calm, and I think he uses good vision when he's working and looking for work outside of sorting out who a quarterback spy is when he's pass protecting, which was often Arvell Reese in that game, which is not an easy task. And then he had hell of a one-on-one rep against Caden Curry in that game as well. I think he's a high-effort combo blocker, and he's got nice initial hand power to generate some knockback. Another guy that I noted, his spatial awareness. I think he tempos his routes really well over the middle of the field to maximize the time he spends in throwing lanes. I just don't think him and Arch Manning were on the same page a lot of times this season. There's a lot of times Endries comes open on a backside dig or a slant, and Arch just doesn't get his head that way. There's a reason these two guys just had 346 yards when they connected. A lot of those yards came in the back half of the season. And then lastly, nice speed and acceleration after the catch. Not the strongest anchor. Think he can add weight, though. And then the route speed is overall good. Nothing exceptional. I'll have my eye on the 10-yard split at the combine. But Jack Endries, I think, has a claim to be the most complete tight end in this draft class, if not top 2, top 3. But I love Jack Endries. I've got a second round grade on Jack Endries, one of 2 players in this class that I have a second round grade on. So really excited about him.
What'd you have him listed weight wise?
240.
Okay, I had him at 235. I was going to say I think think he can hold 240 plus. And the one of the negatives
250 is what I'm like. Yeah.
One of the negatives I had was I think that he could be stronger. I think that that's just putting on 5 to 10 more pounds of muscle. And then, like you said, his frame can hold that there. So I do think that that's something, but he probably has some of the best hands, if not the best hands in this class. He's a vacuum.
Yeah.
Whenever it's thrown to him, he catches it, whether it's outside of his frame, whatever it is, his 0% drop rate this year. Great in the run. I liked him as a moving run blocker. I think you kind of hit on that a little bit. When he's on the move, like counter split zone action, I think he punishes guys. Like I love that.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's a very good, teams love running counter. And so to have that ability for him, and he's athletic enough to be able to get out there, get to the second level, get to backers. I really like that from him. I do think he stretches the seam with his good athleticism. Another guy that I wrote down, I thought he was very good at sitting it down in zone, like very good spatial awareness, not quite to the level of Eli Stowers, but again, maybe it was just him and Arch Manning, just something about that, right? There were really good games with Arch and really bad games with Arch. And so, I'm high on him. I would say that he, in my opinion, feels like a safer pick than Raritan and Trigg, who I have above him. But I also could see Raritan and Trigg having a way higher ceiling than him if they reach their potentials.
Totally fair. I like it. It sounds like we both like the player. It's just, we talk about the rankings for the invisible team. Sometimes it adds up differently, and that's the fun of it.
So let's move on to tight end 2 for me and tight end 5 for you. Max Clare out of Ohio State. I'll start this one off. 6'5", 240 pounds. This guy was a Purdue transfer. I will say, I feel like last year at Purdue,
at Ohio State?
No, at Purdue in 24 at Purdue.
Yeah.
You saw how good of a pass catcher he could be. And then this year it was like, again, with Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, they probably weren't going to throw the ball as much to him when they have those guys on the outside. So then you saw this year how good of a run blocker he was. So for me, putting the 2 years together kind of was like, whoa, I've seen him do both of them at a very high level. So in 2024 at Purdue, he had 684 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then this year at Ohio State, he only had 448 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I thought this guy's really good as an inline or a wing guy. I think he has good route running abilities. He knows how to set up his defenders. That's what I saw in 2024. I think he's incredible down the seam. His IQ, he's another guy that, in my opinion, becomes very available to quarterbacks in zone coverage. I do think his technique can improve as a blocker. He needs to be a little more physical, but again, this is another guy that I would put on 5 to 10 pounds of muscle. And then I think that he would be a more complete guy. I wrote down, I think that this is like a Mark Andrews type of guy, and that will hit home with you.
I like that comp.
I could see him being a Mark Andrews type guy in the NFL, like a very, very solid tight end 1. Probably could be a top 8 tight end in the whole NFL, maybe a top 5 some years. Maybe he's not going to have the elite athleticism to be like a number 2 or 3 guy in the NFL, but he will be a tight end 1 someday for a team. And I think he can be a very productive tight end 1. And I honestly like how the 2 years I've seen, hey, I had a lot of production in the pass game. I was really good. Boom. Then the next year, hey, I'm not going to get the ball as much, or, they have other guys on the outside, and he showed what he can do as a run blocker. So I liked putting together both 2024 and 2025 film for Max Clare.
Yeah, and I think there's some changes in the listed weight, if I'm not mistaken, from Purdue to Ohio State. I might be wrong there, but I feel like it was like 235 or something like that when he was a younger player, and then now like 243. I'm just quickly fact checking myself, but I just think he looks like a bigger, thicker player at Ohio State on tape, and a little bit more slimmer, fluid, and athletic at Purdue on tape. That might just be total placebo because the numbers are better as a receiver, but I did think that he maybe looked a half step slower at Ohio State, which I think is fine. I think you just get some of the right weight back onto him, find what his number is, and find that sweet spot. I think this is kind of funny. You're 2, my 5, and I think it's kind of a similar discussion to Jack Andrews, who we just had. I like Max Clear a lot. Don't mind that Mark Andrews comparison there. I think this guy has a high chance of going in the second round. And so, listen, his landing spot and his draft value is going to make him a valued player, even though Mark Andrews was the second tight end drafted by his own team in his draft class, and they drafted a first-round tight end that year.
Hayden Hurst? Was that Hayden Hurst year?
Yeah, you don't need me to get into the story about being so upset the Ravens traded back twice, and then they got Hayden Hurst. I went to bed so upset and then woke up and saw Lamar Jackson in a Ravens hat on the front page of ESPN. Because that's the year they traded back into the first round. And then I was really upset. So I wasn't awake for the draft pick of Lamar Jackson. But athletic mover. And I think that he settled well in space at a much higher rate on the Purdue film. But I anticipate that NFL teams watch that back and they're like, hey, you were better at Purdue at doing that. We're going to get you comfortable doing that at the NFL level. I think he's a very good zone blocker. I think he can have a tendency to lunge into his blocks. There's some just misses when he ends up doing that. But I think the median block, when he puts it all together and starts getting into his block the right way with the right technique, he's a good player there. I don't think that he has the best power as a blocker, but maybe you just get a bigger tight end behind him, and don't ask him to be the power blocking guy. So, instead of Isaiah Likely behind this Mark Andrews, let's get Cody Hardy, or, oh my gosh, Will Kachmarek, his teammate at Ohio State. That's why it worked so well. But Max Clare, I think a very steady, high floor player who, honestly, I think if he tests well at the combine and we see some Purdue athleticism in Indy, I think he's going to go up my board.
Yeah, no, and that's why I say, like, I just was so intrigued by watching 2024 and being like, this guy is such a good pass catcher. And then going
a little
to
bit
Ohio
of
State,
two different players.
It really is. And that's why I'm like,
it sketches me out just a little bit. I'd be like, I think there's totally a chance that we get the blend there. And an NFL team is able to say, let's take what you did well, both places. But I'm like, is that possible?
No, it sketches me out for sure, because like you said, I think he gained a little bit of weight. He lost a step, but then I think it's on an NFL team to draft him and say, hey, listen, we want you at 245 and we're going to get you back to your ability to be a good pass catcher and be a good run blocker. Like, they will find a balance. I'm worried about it because it's like, are you going to get one or the other, or can you combine it to both? But then I'm also not worried about it because you see the skill set for both there. You see that he can do both of them at a high level. Now you just got to be able to combine them as a coaching staff, as an evaluation, figure out what he's going to be the best at. And that's where I think that where some team will take him in the late second.
And if you had to pick one, you pick focusing on the receiving ability.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, 100%. Like, I think you can find better blockers than him, but he will be an adequate blocker. Like I said, Mark Andrews. I would also say
Andrews is a very nice blocker.
Yeah, like, I think he's a very good blocker, and maybe he doesn't have quite as upside there, especially if he loses a little bit of weight or gets back to more of a receiving threat. But he will not be a below average blocker at any point in the NFL, in my opinion.
Well, somebody who could be, but was much better at blocking this year. Both of our tight end ones, Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. I can start here. I think Kenyon Sadiq has every right to be most people's tight end one. 21-year-old, 6'3", 245. Didn't have exactly the production everybody was looking for this year, but still very impressive on tape. Big player. Just yoked. Never misses arm day. He's a little bit smaller frame than some of the other players in this class, but he's got really big catch radius. He's physical at the catch point, hands to make off frame grabs. The 6 drops in 2025 were kind of just scattered across the tape. I felt like I didn't really notice a pattern. I'm just hoping it's not something that sticks in 2026 at the NFL level. Superb athlete, navigates the check and release well in pass pro. And then I think he set up his base so much better as a run blocker this year before engaging so he could have that anchor. And I think that's what allowed him to win a little bit more consistently against bigger players, but win consistently on downfield blocks at the second level, which is what I needed from him going into 2025. And he checked that box, which is huge. Strong hands, good grip as a blocker, able to steer defenders and control the reps. He won't win reps against defensive ends at the NFL level in the run game, but I think he's at least got the ability to wash them out around the play when there's a downhill run and just get a tight end that specializes in blocking behind him. Not that he's a bad one, but you just don't want him to be your best one. And then great after the catch. My weakness for Kenyon Sadiq, which causes me to have some pause, is as much as we've talked about spatial awareness for tight ends in this draft class, I still think he runs routes a little bit like a wide receiver and doesn't involve that spatial awareness and sitting in zone and activity in the scramble drill as much as he needs to. And that I kind of teased it a little bit. I don't know if you picked up on it as Jack Endries being one of my 2 tight ends I have a second round grade on. That wasn't me referring to Eli Stowers as a second round grade. That was referring to me referring to Kenyon Sadiq as a second round graded player for me.
Interesting.
I think he's a superb athlete and the receiving ability is all there, but the lack of, I feel like, spatial awareness and ability to run tight end style routes at this point in his career gives me some pause. But I have all the faith in the athlete and the blocker that he ascended into being. And I think the spatial awareness can be coached up. And the yak is awesome. The alignments are awesome. So a super exciting player. And if you look at my ranking of him, you won't see that maybe I have some more pause than others because he's still a great player. But there's some caution with him, but love the guy that he can be.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is another guy that appealed on Fieldman's freak list. So he was 11th right here. I mean, he had a vertical jump of 41 and a half inches. He power cleaned 365, bench press 435. He's at 12% body fat as of last year at 245 pounds and 6'3". Like, he is a chiseled up freak that's going to look like a statue at the combine. Like, he's going to look like it was Vincent Van Gogh, or that's a painter. So who was I don't know who.
Michelangelo?
Is there you go, guy? Michelangelo. He's going to look like Michelangelo carved him out of stone. He has the frame. I think that, like you said, I love that he got better in the run game this year. And as a 20-year-old prospect, he'll be 21 going into the season. I think he still has his best football ahead of him. He can get stronger. He has a great frame, but I think he can get even stronger at the NFL level and put on NFL strength, especially in his legs. I believe he's an elite level athlete. He's a mismatch nightmare with the ball in his hands. That's when you want him there. You know, he's able to hurdle guys, he's able to make guys miss, whatever it is. I think he needs to be a little bit better playing through contact, which I think will come with just his growth as a player and more of a tight end than, like you said, a receiver. And then the other concern that I had personally is when he's not the best athlete on the field, because oftentimes he was in college. Where does that, like route running, spatial awareness, like you mentioned, does that improve? And I think it does. I'm betting on him as an athlete. I'm betting on a team taking it and developing him into more of a pass catching tight end, because as of right now, he's just an elite level athlete. But that is what guys draft, especially at the tight end position. They want these guys that can be mismatch nightmares, that can get the ball in their hands, make guys miss, be too big for safeties, be too fast for linebackers. And he has everything that you want there. I have him as a mid to low round first round grade right now. Okay. Right now on my big board, I have him in my top 20. That might change just as we get to a little bit more positions and stuff. But right now I do have him in my top 20. I think this guy's probably anywhere in range from 20 to 32, and someone will want there. I mean, Denver's one that pops up if they move on from Evan Ingram. I know that's kind of an easy one there, but I think there's a lot of teams that could use this guy as their
San Francisco.
San Francisco, if Kittle moves
unfortunately. Well, with the Achilles injury and all that.
Yep.
But and let me preface to wrap up with the second round kind of I anticipate him being my highest graded second round player in this draft class. And so, that's just why there's some pause for me, but fantastic athlete, all the tools in the world to develop him. And the ascension as a run blocker paired with the age, paired with, I think he can add a little bit less amazing weight onto his frame. Like just if you're on YouTube, look at the picture up there. Like the guy could use some, have a couple burgers, have some red meat, Kenyon Sadiq. Let's beef up a little bit. I think if you get this guy to 255, he continues to be a really good run blocker and finds that spatial awareness. I think that's kind of what can unlock him into being a top 5 tight end in this league at some point in his career. So super fun class. I think we run through our top 10s and then we'll wrap it up right here.
Yeah, go ahead and start us off.
At 10, I have Dallin Bentley from Utah. 9 is Josh Quavers from Bama. 8 is Tanner Koziel from Houston. 7, Eli Raridan from Notre Dame. 6, Justin Jolly from NC State. 5, Max Clare from Ohio State. 4, Sam Roush from Stanford. 3, I think it was, yes, Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt. 2, Jack Andrews from Texas. And then 1, Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon.
At 10, I have Josh Quavers from Alabama. 9, Tanner Koziel from Houston. Sam Roush at 8 from Stanford. Justin Jolly from NC State at 7. Sorry. Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt at 6. Jack Andrews from Texas at 5. Eli Raridan from Notre Dame at 4. Michael Trigg from Baylor at 3. Ohio State's Max Clare at 2. And then Kenyon Sadiq at tight end number 1.
Hell yeah, Jace.
That was a good episode. I think it's fun. There's been a lot of eye to eye and stuff and, a couple rankings here and there, but there were some differences in opinions there, which is good. That's what makes it fun. And this will be a fun class. There will be a lot of good tight ends coming out of this class, in my opinion. Like, I think the Patriots, like as a Patriots fan, like they need a tight end. There's 6 guys on that list, probably more that I would really like to pair with like a Hunter Henry. Like, I think for a Ravens fan, if Isaiah Likely does leave, and
probably going to walk.
Yeah. And so Likely's gone and Mark Andrews is up there in age. This is the class to get one. Like
Stowers,
there's tight ends.
Andrews.
That would be nice. Or just get Max Clare and replace Andrews. And there's the guy.
You go.
No, I think this is a fun class. I'm excited to watch as it unfolds. And like you said, testing at the combine will be so big for a lot of these players, not only at the tight end position, but at every position. And we will have a mock draft at some point next week after the combine.
Yes, we'll hit offensive linemen. I don't know if we're going to end up combining those into one episode with, maybe we'll give you guys like multiple top 8s in the same episode. We'll figure that all out. If you have a preference and are still listening at this juncture in the episode, leave a comment and tell us your preference. Yeah, very fun episode with the tight ends. I think it's a class to look forward to. Not exactly the strength on the top end as that, I forget what year it was, but with Michael Mayer and Darnell Washington and Luke Musgrave and Dalton Kincaid and Tucker Kraft, I think was also in that class, and Sam Laporta. Obviously not saying it's that level, but there are so many draftable players with legitimate upside to be at least a tight end 2 in this class. So that makes it very, very exciting.
It for sure does. And for a lot of teams that are looking, like we said, for tight ends in the middle rounds, don't want to use a premium pick on, a tight end, especially with the, positional value, I should say. So, but there will be a lot of guys.
The 2 best players in this class are safety and a receiver. So positional value can sit this one out this year.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, you don't think that the best player in this draft is a quarterback? What? Isn't that how it always has to be?
I guess I'm sleeping on Sawyer Robertson,
Yeah, Sawyer Robertson. That's the exact one that I meant.
Michael Trigg Merchant.
I think that's really interesting that you said we'll have to do a big board episode here too, maybe like a top 25 here, because I would say that the 2 best players in this class are possibly running back and edge.
Okay, edge. I would say edge is in the top 3.
Edge linebacker, however you want to classify it.
Oh, edge linebacker. I think now we're talking a little bit top 10, but I think that depends on how you see it.
Really? Yeah, we might have to do a top 25 big board right here, because my top player might be somewhere down in your, bottom or in your 10 through 5 range.
So we'll talk about it after the show.
We will. So, but yeah, make sure you guys stay tuned for a mock draft next week.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you all next time. Peace.